Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to answer which is the better EV charging stock to buy right now. Is it Chargepoint or is it EVgo stock? Now I'm going to compare these two across 5 financial metrics. To answer that question by the end of this video, you're not going to want to miss that, so stay tuned and let's get started with revenue growth. And looking at this metric, EVgo has jumped Chargepoint with the lead here in terms of revenue growth, growing revenue 228% in its most recent quarter, even faster than that in the quarter before. But prior to that, they were pretty close with Chargepoint in terms of revenue growth. Each of these two companies is growing revenue rapidly, and growth on the top line is not a concern for either of these two fast growing electric vehicle charging stocks right now. So with growth secured, I wanted to look at cash flow from operations. Are they growing so quickly that they're losing a lot of money on the bottom line? And the answer is yes. ChargePoint is much worse than EVgo with their losses on the bottom line, and the trend is getting worse. I don't like that. It's not only moving downward, but that rate of growth feels like it's getting worse for ChargePoint here. It lost 104 million in cash flow from operations in its most recent quarter. Meanwhile, EVgo lost 19.34 million in cash flow from operations in its most recent quarter. However, if you look at the last 4 quarters, if you look at the trend line, it's relatively flat in terms of cash flow. It's not getting worse the way ChargePoint is. And so for that reason, I would give EVgo the advantage here again. So 2 for 2 here in terms of advantage in the financial metric for EVgo. Now let's look at operating profit margin over the trailing 12 months. And this is an interesting one here because ChargePoint at negative 64% is better than EVgo, which was negative 224%. However, if you look at the recent trend over the last 2 to 3 quarters, EVgo has improved dramatically its operating losses, right? Moving from close to 400% up to 200%. ChargePoint also doing a good job, improving from close to 120% to 64%. So in this metric, I would call it advantage ChargePoint, although I like the trend for EVgo improving here, although I need to see more evidence, more improvement here from the very, very big losses on the bottom line, negative 224%. So since the companies are losing a lot of money on the bottom line, one thing I always check with companies like this is their cash balance. How much cash do they have? And they have similar amounts. EVgo with 163 million in cash compared with ChargePoint, which has 283 million in cash. Now it's important not just to look at how much cash a company has, but how much cash it has in relation to its cash flow from operations. So let's go back to that. Okay, EVgo is losing 19 million in its most recent quarter, and roughly that rate over the last 4 quarters, and it has 163 million. So it has several quarters, maybe even up to 8 quarters of runway before it runs out of cash at its current rate. Meanwhile, ChargePoint in its most recent quarter lost 104 million, and it has 283 million. So if you look at this, you can see that over 3 quarters, ChargePoint would run out of money. So in terms of its cash, yes, it has more cash than EVgo, but when you compare it with the cash flow from operations, it's going to run out of cash sooner than EVgo if they both maintain their current pace of cash flow from operations. So interesting to compare it with the cash flow from operations, and when we do that, EVgo has the advantage in terms of cash balance. Finally, let's look at valuation, and I chose to use the forward price to sales ratio, and judging by this metric, ChargePoint is significantly more expensive at a forward price to sales of 2.5 compared to EVgo with the forward price to sales of 1.1 at less than half the valuation. So since EVgo had the advantage in many of the financial metrics and it's trading at less than half the valuation of ChargePoint, if I had to pick one of these two stocks to buy right now, I would pick EVgo as my top EV stock to buy between these two, top EV charging stock to buy between these two. All right, but that's all I've got for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.